Thank you, Reverend Francione, for being here in advance. And Reverend Jeff, we're so blessed to have you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Paul.
I want to take this time to welcome all of you, as Paul has done already, and invite you to come with me now as we move into the consciousness of prayer. For we're here to reveal, transcend inner beliefs so we feel empowered to do the work of eradicating racism and to work with others to live in justice. It is my joy to speak my word on our behalf, anchored by a wonderful prayer written by two members of my Power of Your Word class that meets on Tuesday evening. This one is written by Richard Leeds and Barbara Vivino. And I have decided to take license, and I will do with it what I will. But the foundation and the structure is designed by these wonderful, brilliant minds. So at this moment, if you come with me now, we are opening to releasing hate, transcending racism, embracing unity, justice, love, and peace. And so I know right here, right now, beloveds, that we are now knowing that the truth is that the infinite spirit is all there is. It is a presence of unity, a power of justice, of love, of peace. For this infinite source provides an unshakable and deep sense of safety, compassion, and the infinite spirit is the very essence of kindness. Right now, I know that this eternal presence is alive within me, and the unity, justice, love, and peace flow through me and as me. As the source flows through me, I am safe. I experience compassion. I experience peace. I experience freedom. And what I know is the truth for me, I accept is the truth for each person on this call and in our world today. Yes, I am one with all life and in alignment with love for all beings. And as we breathe that very deeply, let us realize at this very moment that right now, we know that we embody unity, justice, love, and peace. We stand boldly opening our minds and our hearts to release anything that is unlike this truth. For we recognize that anything that is unlike the truth has moved us into the historic issue of oppression and racist violence against African Americans in this country. We live filled with the energy of unity, justice, love, and peace, where every action we take is infused with this energy and this feeling. And we claim right here, right now, all beings recognize the sacredness of each other. And every action we take expresses mutual respect. Divine right action showing up as equity and justice is occurring in all areas of our lives, individually and collectively. And so with a deep breath, I give thanks. For as we know that we are just and teeming with peace and love, we give thanks for this knowing. Our hearts overflow with peace and gratitude. We are so grateful and so thankful for the compassion of God that is our compassion too and expresses itself in all of our relationships. And so in this knowing, I joyfully release this word unto the law, accepting right here and right now that it is done, absolutely knowing and with conviction, I accept it is done. Please join me in accepting this word by saying with me, and so it is.
So it is.
Peace and blessings.
Blessed be. Thank you, Reverend Fran. So that was Barbara Vivino and Robert Leeds.
Yes.
Wow, you have quite a class going on there.
Oh, we have a powerful class.
Yes, you do. Well, welcome everybody. I'm grateful as we were getting started looking through the lists of folks that are here tonight. Gosh, I miss you guys, and it's nice to be in the same time and space with you. This evening, we're having a conversation that we have at least initially titled A Safe Space for a Community Conversation. Safety, we agree, Fran and I, is key. And this community conversation, this is the village. This is when we come together and have these, it's like a family chat. I'll get into more of that later. Let's see, community conversation about cultural and ethnic bias. And that's going to be our focus for tonight. One of the things that Reverend Francione and I quickly realized as we began talking this week and accumulating notes, both of us which have huge stacks of notes and revisions, and we've had many conversations about many things. And the realization is that there are a lot of conversations to be had, and this is one of them. We're not going to cover everything that needs to be covered in one 60-minute conversation. But if we can begin to do our work, then we have accepted the invitation that has been pretty clearly extended to us to reconsider all that we've been told and dismiss what insults our soul. So that's what we're doing tonight. We do request that focus of cultural and ethnic bias for purposes of the conversation tonight, recognizing that there's a lot of other stuff to be talked about, but again, we'll take it one bite at a time. This space, our desire is that this be a very safe and supported environment. I know that for myself, safety is critical for me to feel like I can expose myself, I can be authentic, I can be vulnerable. And that's what we're inviting of ourselves too. Part of my realization here is that this is an opportunity, our community is an opportunity for us to practice with each other, witnessing and walking with and loving each other as we unpack our stuff, as we consider what's ours to consider. So to facilitate that for this conversation tonight, we're going to ask that there's no crosstalk. If you would, use your I statements and speak to your own experiences. Safety, sanctuary, sacred witnessing is a term that I use a lot, and that's what I want to be tonight, is a sacred witness to our community as we have these conversations. And that's what I'm asking of you as well, is to be the sacred witness for the other people in your village. Can we be, the question really showed up first, can we be a safe space for each other? And then Reverend Fran rephrased that quickly, and she said, of course we can. And so that's what we come together as, a safe place for each other. And we're a microcosm. As we learn to do it with each other, then we can take it out into the world. And we can demonstrate by the way that we show up in the world, we can contribute that consciousness, that sacred witnessing, that safety to a world that certainly needs safety these days. All right, let's see. We do have something a little bit different tonight, which is practitioners, and thank you practitioners for showing up as you have. With conversations like this, sometimes stuff comes up. And if it does, and you would like to pray during service, that is available for you to do. We've got 4 or 5 practitioners that have made themselves available to step out of the conversation tonight into a breakout room if you feel, if you want or need prayer. If you would please let Sally know. She's running the back office as far as electronics I think you can raise your hand, or you can send her a chat individually to Sally, and just tell her, you know, I'm ready for a little bit of prayer right now, and she'll make that happen. We also have at least 8 or 10 practitioners available to pray with you all after service. So we'll have that available too. Let's see. The other thing that we've done tonight is we've made another 30 minutes available for this conversation. So we'll be watching the clock, and right around 8:20 we'll start to close it up with a closing prayer and whatever our closing announcements are. But the beauty of adding this 30 minutes, especially with an electronic format, is if you need to leave at 8 o'clock, you can. And if you want to hang out till 8:30, there's plenty of space for us to do that. I'm trying to think if I got all of the business and all of the logistics. Is there anything that I forgot, Fran?
About the fourth paragraph where we talked about we are realizing that some of us are realizing some special things after watching a man be killed. That wasn't mentioned by you.
Oh yeah, I'll get to it.
Okay.
I'll get to it. Yeah, that's kind of the crux. Okay.
Yeah.
So to launch into the material a little bit, we're all aware that we find ourselves in interesting times, to say the least, times of awakening, transformative times. And after reading Clarissa Pinkola Estes again this week, I am reminded that we've been practicing our whole lives for this. As I looked through the people that are here tonight in this gathering, we've been around the block, ladies and gentlemen. If any group of people has done their homework and is prepared to navigate this in a mindful and heartful and influential way, I believe that it is us. I did ask Reverend Francione to join me tonight in what I hope is a facilitated conversation. This is one of lots of conversations that we've all been participating in or listening to in the last handful of weeks, as we are realizing after watching a man be killed, that there is much to be reconsidered. Here's part of the premise for tonight, and this is Metaphysics 101. Our beliefs, hidden and otherwise, inform our worldview. As metaphysicians, what we do is we study ourselves, we study those beliefs, and we choose them more and more mindfully and intentionally, as opposed to mindlessly and unconsciously, in order to influence our experience of life. Are you with me so far? So this is Metaphysics 101. As we change our thinking, our worldview changes, and the way that we show up in the world changes. And the influence that we all have inherently within us gets applied to our lives in a more mindful, intentional, awake way. We do our work. My work is always my work. And then as we become more aware of our hidden beliefs or biases, we become responsible for them. And we can change them. I can't change them if I don't know they're there, if I don't know what they are. I can't change the way that I show up in the world if I don't examine myself to see how I am showing up in the world. I'll give you a personal example, and I do this because I believe that part of this process is about hauling things out of the shadow of our minds and hearts and into the light. As we bring our shadow stuff into the light, it loses its power. This story I'm not proud of, but that's another piece of this equation. I realized this week, the ego gets to learn to step aside now and then we can't know what we don't know until we know it. And when we do become aware, then we also become responsible. So I need you all to be the sacred witnesses for me in this moment. When I first started working at our Oakland Center, I was very excited about basically everything that happened. And and I remember being very excited about a facility work day one week that that Paul was facilitating, and I said something. Actually, I think I was working on a promotional piece for the bulletin. God help us, and there was something in there about, and I don't think I even told you about Polly because I was so embarrassed and horrified at this whole thing. I said something about him cracking the whip with his crew. And I didn't know until I knew. And when I did know, I was mortified, something harmful, intentional or not. I felt like a fool. And the choice, the decision then was to purge that saying from my vocabulary and become more mindful. Where are these thoughts and beliefs and biases in my mind and heart? Because if they're in there, they're affecting how I'm showing up in the world. I discovered this racist thought in my head, and if I have beliefs at play in my mind and heart that are hurtful to a group of people that I love, then those hurtful beliefs are not contributing the love to the greater whole of the human experience, which is the macro, which is my heart and soul desire. And it's not contributing to my experience of life, and it's not contributing to the people that I love's experience of life in the micro. Someone that I love and that loves me took me aside and he said, you know, he said whips have a different context in the minds and the hearts of colored. He said colored. He was he is a man of color. He said people of color have a different relationship. He said, do you know where the term cracker comes from? And by now I'm so mortified, I'm melting. But this man loved me enough to point out something to me that I wasn't aware of. And then when I was aware of it, because it's nobody else's but mine. And as we own our stuff, we change, and the way that we show up in the world changes. This piece of our consideration is about becoming aware of our word and the power of it. Words like thug have become very charged. Watch yourself as you will, if you will. That word is used in our culture today. No can do, harmless, until you find out that the saying no can do came from Westerners mocking Chinese immigrants. The phrase sold down the river came from Louisville, Kentucky, where the enslaved were traded in one of the largest slave markets of the 19th century. Very commonly used greeting, long time no see. First became popular as a way of making fun of Native Americans to mock a traditional greeting that they exchanged. The phrase peanut gallery has racist origins. It was the cheapest and worst part of the theater and the only option available to people of color. We're interested in unpacking hidden biases, uncovering them, reconsidering them, evolving them, healing them, and crafting them into something wonderful and loving, something that we want to give and to receive and co-create more of in the world. This conversation tonight is not going to cover all that needs or wants to be discussed. And we're not the only place that conversations are taking place. But the invitation is for each individual to seek out and engage in connection in whatever ways that present themselves for you to do your work. If we are desirous of doing the work, we will be met with the opportunity to do so. I'm reminded, I've been reading a lot of Clarissa Pinkola Estes this week. I believe her to be a very wise and powerful woman. And Reverend Francione read this for our meditation. Ours is not the task of fixing the entire world at once, but of stretching out to mend the part of the world that is within our reach. And so the question then becomes, what is in our reach? And I'll let Fran speak to that. Reverend Francione.
Thank you, Reverend Jeff, and thank you for being willing to be vulnerable, being willing to state experiences that you have had that have not been comfortable in hindsight, and to be willing to make a commitment internally to bring a different empowered self as you're interacting with others to make a world that's working for everyone. Beloveds, this evening we're really talking about you, and you and you and you and me and Reverend Jeff as well. And the thoughts that are rising from our experiences with members of our own families, members who are friends, acquaintances, neighbors, people in your workplaces, in your environment, as you've talked or heard about people of different ethnic groups, and right now focusing on African American people or other groups that are different from your own. This conversation really is about feelings, thoughts, and actions you've had where you've heard or have now that makes you feel somehow different, somehow uncomfortable, embarrassed, more hesitant to do the work that needs to be done right now with other people because something's lingering inside of you, an unexamined bias, thought, or experience that either makes you feel uncomfortable or, as one came to me just before this meeting this evening, one that launches you into an expanded realm that you are still a little bit tentative about embracing. I wanted to start this discussion with reminding us of the conversation that has been having, that people at our Center for Spiritual Living have been having, related to what does it take to transcend racism in the United States and to halt police brutality in the world. And so I've asked that a slide is put up. I want to read something to you. Reverend Jerry read a portion, all of it really, on Sunday. I'm going to only read a portion because I would like very much for us to hold that in the context of some of the experiences that I want to share with you about some deep-seated thoughts and feelings that I've had to bring forth. So if they will put up the slide, the first one, I would love for you to see it and to let you know just in advance that even though I'm reading only a portion of the slide, there are about 4 altogether and I'm going to read about 3. If you want the whole document, Constance has said that she's willing to email it to you if you email her and just let her know that you would like to have it. But the Centers for Spiritual Living are calling for an end to racism in the United States, reminding us that we are grieving lives that ought not to have been lost. George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery are the most recent in a list of countless unarmed African American and Black people who have been murdered for the color of their skin over the past 400 years in the United States. Too many generations have suffered, and it has never been and it is not now acceptable. Let's move on to the next one. We denounce racism in all its forms. The starkness of an unapologetic intentional racism, the racism of silence in the face of injustice, the systemic racism inherent in our education, in our justice systems, in our income and opportunity environments that have inequity, racism that lies hidden in our individual hearts, our individual minds. We, the Centers for Spiritual Living, we here that are in leadership of the community that is right here on this very Zoom call, envision a world where personal responsibility joins the subconscious, let me make sure that I have the right words here. Social conscious in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors. Beloveds, we value a community-wide climate of safety that arises from compassion, from justice, from mutual respect and kindness. Therefore, we join our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, who echoed the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that said, "You and I should form the habit of taking definite time each day to contemplate and affirm peace with justice, for there is no peace possible without justice. But faith without works is dead. We should not only pray, we should act, each contributing the best that they have to the common purpose, each willing to make a sacrifice necessary, where there can be no individual preservation without the preservation of all." I'll repeat that last statement here. But faith without works is dead. We should not only pray, we should act, each contributing the best that they have to the common purpose, each willing to make a sacrifice as necessary, where there can be no individual self-preservation without the preservation of all. And I would say to you, because it comes up to me spontaneously, that often much of our work as we take our Science of Mind classes has been about our individual work. And the invitation of this stand and some of the classes that have been offered more recently is that we begin to expand our individual work into the work that is done in community, locally, nationally, and I dare say now, internationally. Our desire is to encourage a shift in consciousness in mind and heart to root out and release what no longer serves any one of us. And also to shift into consciousness in mind and heart to begin to pay attention to what is calling us to reveal itself more magnificently, to begin to shift our attention and energies so that we become available to do the work of justice, so that there's no more police brutality, no more people getting killed with callous of mindless thought or no thought. That change is afoot now. When we begin to see people protesting all over the nation, all over the world about the same things, asking for a cessation of police brutality, a change in our relationships with one another, we are responding to the call that's in our hearts that says, come, let us go the way now of doing that inner work. For we recognize, those of us who are about spiritual growth, that we cannot just change things on the outer unless we bring an open heart, a loving mind, and a passionate attention to the work that we're doing. And we're here about freeing ourselves so that we can go about working to work with others so that everyone is free. This evening, I'm inviting you to go into the silence in a few moments to allow to come forth hidden feelings, beliefs, thoughts, or experiences that reveal something that causes you to either feel resistant and halting about African-American people, Black people, or to also consider if there is something that is calling you that is hidden, that is inviting you to a broader purpose of life, that even is frightening you to be able to engage in it. You may express the hidden feeling aloud, then allow yourself to go into the healing to free you to be able to do the essential work of bringing justice into the world. I am convinced that many people jump into action not having done their own inner work, and sometimes then either get worn out or bring that egoic nature that you want people to do things your way, and therefore we are unable to reveal what life is calling us to do in community with others. I want to give you two examples from my own personal life of ways in which I have found something calling forth that need to be changed in one instance and to invite me to expand in the other. But I recall when I was a very young girl that my dad married a white woman. My mother never commented about it, but it was when I was in junior high school I became consciously aware from his third wife that my dad did not financially care for my sister and I, but did provide financial care and sometimes housing for my half-white sisters, Tosh and Leah. Mom never talked negatively about my father, but always talked about how smart he was. And now, the thought of not being financially cared for by him gave me feelings of tremendous sadness that created a downward spiral in my thinking this very morning. My account of some of the feelings of not being loved by men that look like my father, I began to think may have had something to do with the fact that he didn't ever take responsibility for our care. I am so thrilled that at the same time this image came to me that I've been teaching the Power of Your Word class and was reminded of the brilliance of Dr. Ernest Holmes, who reminds us that when we have thoughts that are constricting us, creating sadness and confusion, doubt or fear, that those are not the true thoughts of who we truly are, but are the hidden thoughts that are lodged within us that are now we are welcoming as they come forth to be released. And so this very morning, after I had this feeling come to me, and after talking with the ministers, but not about this, except to let them know that I was feeling somewhat sad about it, I remember being thrilled that I could recall what I had been taught and was teaching. And I moved into the realization step of affirmative prayer after I did the first two steps where I affirm my own conviction in what we know to be the truth, that there's only one life. That life is the life that is divine, that is caring and nurturing, responsive to our thoughts. That life was within me. And therefore, at the time of realization, I could affirm, I could acknowledge that the sad feelings that I was having, the feeling of being abandoned, were not the truth of my being. Oh, hear me now, people. They were not the truth of my being. And I declare, therefore, that the eternal spirit has always cared for me in every kind of way. The spirit showed up as the dedication of my mom working 3 jobs to make sure that we had the beautiful home that we lived in and that my mother owned. The nurturing care of my grandmother, who was always around and always caring for us. The spirit came forth in enabling us to not only have home, but clothing and nourishing and health care, and the wonderful love of my uncle, who cared for me at the time when I was very little, and stayed living in the same house that we lived in, but downstairs, for the whole 22 years that we lived at that house. So here was another man who I absolutely loved, who demonstrated the care of a father to me. So I confidently was able to relax into knowing that I live boldly in the care of the eternal spirit and am free to open to be the caring presence of spirit, caring and nurturing and giving of my life and my talents to ensure that not only me, but all African-American people can experience justice and freedom from brutality. I was giving thanks as I also was able to joyfully acknowledge that I had raised 2 very responsible and caring sons who absolutely care for their children. And so I realized that the pain that I was feeling, I had not passed on to my children, and something wonderful was unfolding. We're talking today about how we go within and in silence begin to allow to come forth something that says, I no longer need to live with you. I am not the truth of your being. It's time for you to let me go. But before I give you instructions of possibilities that you may use, I also wanted to tell you one other example from my own life of a way in which hidden biases can also launch you into something that is more expansive for your life. But to find them, sometimes we have to do that same process of quietly going within. Just before this meeting started, that my mother used to do poems in Black dialect. And when I was a little girl, we would watch her on the stage at our church that I grew up in, frequently giving poems. And this one came to my mind that I won't read the whole thing, but I just wanted to read one verse of it by Paul Laurence Dunbar called the Antebellum Sermon, because it laid the foundation of hidden beliefs that have shifted my life in an awesome way. In one of the verses of the poem, it says, so you see, the Lord's intention ever since the world began was that his almighty freedom should belong to every man. But I think it should be better if I pause again to say that I'm talking about our freedom in a Biblistic way. But the Moses is a-coming, and he's coming sure and fast. Oh, we can hear his feet a-tumbling. We can hear his trumpet blast. The poem goes on and reminds us that freedom is our legacy. And I realized that as this came up for me, that it sent a shiver in my body, because it reminded me that I had heard that all my life. And most of my life, though I had family members that were political activists, I always claimed that I was an artist and I wasn't interested in that kind of thing. Until I got into ministerial school and we found ourselves bumping against oppressive conditions for African-American people stated by the director of our ministerial school. And when Reverend Eloise and her son and I were in school, at break time, we said, some of them said, we're going to leave. And I said, no, we need to stay and fight this. So I realized the very freedom that is talked about in that poem had launched itself through me, scaring me somewhat, but enabling me to know that in order to do the work, I had to reveal that part within myself that already knew that freedom, justice, equality, and equity were the legacy of African-American people in general and my life specifically. So it is with that in mind that I would like to pause for just a moment, take a little bit of a breath, because I can feel some energy around that within me, celebrate the insights that are coming to me, and also share what the invitation is that I want to offer to you for this evening. The invitation is that you are tending the garden of your mind, to commit to our process of weeding that garden, uncovering and releasing whatever thoughts, fears, beliefs, biases that stand either in the way of experience or releasing you to a new experience that stuns you into knowing whether or not you have the capacity to do it. The invitation of this activity is to begin opening ourselves to shift consciousness so that we're able to feel strength to work with others to co-create change and bring forth justice and ensure police brutality is non-existent, and that we have a new world, worldwide and nationwide and citywide, that makes a difference for everyone. So let me take a moment and give you some ground rules. I'm going to invite you to enter into a few moments of silence. And while in that space, I invite you to open to any hidden beliefs that want to come forth about Black people, Black men, or others that come to your mind that have you having some sense of, somehow I've heard something from family members or friends, or allowed some statements to be made by others that have not served a way for me to feel free to really launch into activity that enables a freedom to take place for everyone. As you're in that place of quiet, I invite you to allow yourself to notice how you're feeling, to notice what are the beliefs that are coming to you. What has it meant to you in terms of what your willingness to do something or not do something? And then as you're ready, we would invite you to be willing, as I have just told some of my own story, to be able to share aloud with this nurturing community what emerged for you. And to know that you're in a very safe environment. As Reverend Jeff said earlier, we are here to support you. No one will be commenting on any statement that you make, just like no one's going to comment on my statement that I made. No one will be giving you any form of feedback. And if you decide as you, or if you feel as you are in either the silence of coming out of it or telling your story that you want practitioner support, all you need to do is either put it on the chat room or let Sally know you would like prayer either right now, or you can wait until after 8:30 when our time is concluded for this session. I'm going to ask you now to open your minds and your hearts to engage in going into the silence. So come with me now as we go into the silence. Will you allow your mind and your heart, your feelings and thoughts to be still? To breathe very deeply. And right now, will you say to yourself, welcome any hidden feeling or belief or thought that is willing to come forward right now. Welcome any feeling, any thought that is hidden, that causes me hesitation or causes me to have strange feelings when I think about working with Black people and people of color. As I'm in the silence, do I hear any family member say something, as Barack Obama's grandfather used to call him, he said in his book, he used to call me, hey nigger? Have I heard any family members say anything like that? That I've been hesitant to say, not around me? Have I found myself supporting those that won't let people of color live in the neighborhood where I live, or socialize with people that I've known when I was younger or now? Or in the corporate settings that I might work in, when promotions are being entertained, that I haven't supported somebody of color or a Black person getting a position that might supersede my own. Right now, as I'm silent for the next few minutes, I invite you to allow any thoughts that are hidden, that have constricted some of the activity that you've had, or invite you into something that is more powerful than you are emotionally ready to entertain. I'm going to be quiet for the next 2 minutes for you to have thinking time. And then we would like to invite people who are ready or who are willing, may not be ready to share. Let us be quiet for the next couple of minutes or so. What are the hidden beliefs, feelings, or thoughts that want to make themselves known to you right now? And now I want to invite anybody that wants to share something to feel free to do so. And remember, if as you're sharing, before you're sharing or afterward, you would like to have prayer support, please say no. Or you can wait until after 8:30, 8:20, I guess it is. If you are willing to unmute yourself and or raise a hand to let us know that you want to share, please do so right now. Constance, you want to share?
Yes, I'll share. One of the things that came to me in the silence and while you were talking was, well, there's so many things. I can't tell you, there's so many things that have come to me. That one of the things that I've recognized is that part of the reason that I went to Canada and stayed there for so long was because I didn't know how to deal with things in this country. And I could avoid it up there. Although I certainly couldn't avoid racism because racism exists there too. It's just that when in British Columbia, the Black population is extremely small.
Mm-hmm.
So that particular form of racism, I didn't have to deal with. And so I didn't have to deal with my own racism around it because I wasn't there. And when I first came back here, I would be driving along and these thoughts would come into my head and I'd go, what the F, where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
And it was like relentless. And I just had to keep seeing them and letting them go and going, no, this is not, because and they still come up, and new ones come up, like one of the things I recognized as you were talking and as we went into the silence, that on the one hand, when I was growing up, a young woman named Janice Harden used to babysit for us. She was Afro-American. And I remember several times when she was babysitting, some of her friends coming over and us all piling into this, whoever's car it was, and driving, and we drove into the other part of the town I lived in, which was where all the Afro-Americans lived.
Mm-hmm.
And there was something in that car. There was some sort of connection that I didn't experience in my own family, mm-hmm. and that I didn't experience in my own life.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a type of connection that was going on among her and her friends that I just didn't know, which is the same thing that I found when I went to Canada. I think that's one of the reasons I stayed, that there was a connection there, particularly among, not necessarily the Anglo
Mm-hmm.
population, because I don't think it was there, but when I worked with the First Nations community, it was the same thing. There was a connection there and a sense of spirituality and a sense of connection to the larger world that I didn't experience, even though I grew up in a church. It wasn't there. And so I don't know where it came from, but somehow in my life, I got the belief that no one can be free until we're all free.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've held to for a long time. And yet I haven't spoken out much about it here. And it's just recently, as I've been rereading and looking at and listening to James Baldwin, that it's coming back to me so strongly. And really recognizing that something's I don't know what's going to happen with that, but something is, because I've already started to write things. And I think one of the ways it's come out for me was putting out the Village News that I put out on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that with Black Lives Matter and with it being Pride Month, that I could do something about that, and that I could interview some of our congregants who are in both of those communities and profile them and put something in about the history of some of the Afro-Americans in the LGBTQ community who have been pioneers and have broken ground in many different levels. So I think that's all I'm going to say right now, but it's I really appreciate you giving us the time to do this. So.
Blessed be, and thank you so much, Constance.
Makes sense.
Is there someone else that would like to take a moment to share? Whoever is ready, please just unmute yourself and raise a hand or start talking.
Okay.
Yes, Anthony.
Yeah. Couple of things. One is you said some hidden bias. That's one, and then the other one is moving to something that scares you into an expanded experience.
Yes.
And the hidden bias, I'm really racking my brain and memory and thinking because I'm Latin American, I'm Mexican American.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a fair-skinned Latin American. I have the name Anthony, so I could, with curly hair, could pass off as white European. But I'm one of 8 kids, and several of my siblings are dark-skinned.
Mm-hmm.
A brother who's very close, and he definitely has experienced discrimination, and even as a teenager. And he had a perfect afro. I mean, this thing was gorgeous. Mm-hmm. And I had one too. Mm-hmm. But he would tell me, and I would say, no, it's all in your mind. It's not, that's not what's happening. I would be in denial, but for years and years, and it took me a while to sink in, the discrimination, it has abated. He almost looks like Middle Eastern sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I've never really took him seriously until recently, within the last 10, maybe more than that, 15 plus years. I've searched my heart and mind through my personal history to see, have I discriminated? And it's okay, this is coming out. Yes and no. It depends on what the Black man looks like. Mm-hmm. You know, there's I'm going to use it, the gang member looking guy with the hoodie and the pants down, halfway down his legs. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whoa, you know, and it's not so much that he's Black, I guess it looked threatening. Because then I look at men, African-American men, who wear golf shirts and slacks, and I go, oh, you know, I don't, there's nothing there. There's no charge. So mm-hmm. I think it depends on what they look like. Mm-hmm. But I've just sensed to myself, looking back, so how did I feel? I think compassion. I've had Black friends as teenagers too. My father was in the Air Force, and in some military situations, everybody is on the same page and they all are unhappy with the government. But I've seen discrimination take place too, and I felt, why, you know? So this moves into the next piece, which is what you said about moving towards something that scares you, that expands you. And there are actually, you know, movement and conversation, a lot of conversation. This is what we can do. I live in the city of San Leandro. I'm on Nextdoor app. People are talking about city council meetings where we talk about the police budget. And there's a part of me, I've never been really a political activist. I always thought, you know, it's just, yeah, I'll just put it that way. It's something I shunned until recently, and this stuff's come out. So that's one avenue of moving toward an experience that could expand me and really clarify and solidify, how do I really feel about this action? Prayer and action, love and action, call it what you will. Another piece attached to that, on the social media, there are things that say this is how you could support like Black Lives Matter or the movement. And one of them is, if you see an injustice, speak out against it. And of course, there are people filming cops beating on people, specifically Black people, like at the demonstrations, and they're just like in the cop's face. And I think, would I do that? And would I risk being hit by a cop? Mm-hmm. Would I risk physical well-being? Another situation that triggered my mind was that I have nieces that live in Las Vegas. And one of my nieces looks like a Latina. She's kind of plump, dark curly hair. And she went into a bar recently with some girlfriends. And she said, I was the only person of color. And some guy says, you know, if I hear people complain about white privilege one more time, I'm just going to beat the hell out of them. And so she said, oh, that was my time to leave. Mm-hmm. And she knows she has a temper too. So she said, I definitely didn't want. So I asked myself, if you heard somebody complaining like that, would I engage in a conversation? Would I engage in a conversation? I mean, I would try to make it as civil as possible. But would I risk my physical well-being? Mm-hmm. And I know both Martin Luther King and Gandhi, I mean, they were threatened. Their lives were threatened. And in this day and age, it goes beyond threats. People just take this brutality. There's police brutality, but there's just, people just get physically aggressive if you try to make a stand. So this conversation has triggered those thoughts. Yeah, that's it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anthony.
Okay.
Thank you, Anthony, and blessed be.
Thank you.
Goodness. Who else?
Is there someone else that would like
Yeah,
to?
it's me. It's Susan Becker.
Yes, Susan.
Please, Susan.
Anthony mentioned white privilege, and I am a woman of white privilege. And I've been being with that for a long time. The first time I had heard that, it made me terribly uncomfortable and in a space of responsibility that I had no idea about it. But lately, what I am discerning for myself is, as a woman of white privilege, how am I showing up in the world? Am I consciously aware that is pushing me first? What is my, I don't know what the word is, but again, can I stay conscious enough to reflect when that reveals itself and not necessarily beat myself up, but to dive ever deeper into what that really means to me?
Yeah.
Because at first it didn't mean anything. So that's where I am right now. And I'm reading the book about my white supremacy and listening to it at the same time. And that is, oh gosh, I guess you want me to turn on my video. Okay, there it is.
There you are.
Thank you.
And that, you know, I'm not in a level of discomfort anymore with diving deep into what I reflect about white privilege. I used to be very embarrassed. I used to be mortified by the idea that I am a woman of white privilege. Mm-hmm. And I think that because of that, I did not expand at all. Mm-hmm. I kind of stayed hidden. Mm-hmm. And now as I move to an expanded place, not to judge it so much, but to try and embrace, try to embrace that and see how it either serves me or doesn't serve me, or how does it serve my community?
Yes.
How does it serve the world? So that's where I am now. And sometimes I'm very, very sad about this. And it makes me cry. That's it. I'm done.
One thing that this last week that has been helpful to me over the last couple of days, something Maya Angelou said. She said you do the best you can until you know better, and then you do better. And that's where I find myself, and that's where I see us. You know, we're willing to do better. And the fact is, we've realized that the best we can, has fallen short. And so we're looking for ways, I'm looking for ways to show up to contribute more good to the world. And I think that's what this conversation is about. And I for one, am proud of us, and I know the shame of it. I've experienced that myself, and I've watched as my mind and my heart have evolved, and just in considering and watching folks and understanding and being compassionate with people wherever they find themselves on this path of reconsideration, of restoration, because I've been in a lot of those places on the path. So it actually serves me once I forgive myself, my humanity.
There's something very exciting to me and challenging about the protests that are so intently taking place in every state in the United States and in different parts of the world in relationship to what you are talking about. And this isn't feedback to either one of you, because I promise not to give feedback.
Yeah.
But what I am is being stunned by the number of white people that have shown up physically present, and young people who are showing up being physically present in these events, I think modeling a way for many of us of what possibilities exist when we want change. I think that's all I want to say right now, but is there somebody else that wants to share? Because I want to allow another person to share, since I've kind of told my stories already. Is there
I will, Maureen.
Thank you, Maureen.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi. So there's so many things coming up. It's like, but there's two things that I really want to share. One of them is if you guys haven't seen it, comedy really can be an eye-opening experience. And this is why I say this. I watched on Netflix, it's Wanda Sykes' Not Normal episode or whatever show. Okay. And I was watching Wanda Sykes. I think she's funny, so I was watching it. And it's the 2019 version, 2019 episode or whatever. And I'm listening to her, and one of her bits goes, "You need white people. You need a black friend. You must have a black friend." And I was laughing, just laughing, thinking, oh yeah, that's really, really funny, And then my mind goes, well, what about black people? And then she goes, and if you listen to the bit more, it says, now you white people, if you're thinking about black people should have a white friend, it's okay that they don't have white friends because they have trust issues. And now I just laughed and laughed, right? But that bit had me really thinking, and the current things that have been happening in the world with the names you named, George Floyd, Breonna. In fact, San Leandro, where I live, Stephen Taylor was shot and killed in the Walmart. In fact, just a little bit before George Floyd. And when Wanda Sykes was saying, get up, you need a black friend, I really, the thing with George Floyd and all these, these groups of black people being killed, I really felt it in a different way. And the reason is because I have an extremely good friend that I've been friends with now for about 2 years. He is a black male. I think there is truth to what I'm saying, because when the news of Stephen Taylor, the news of Floyd, these are Black men being killed. And my friend Willie, who I love dearly and have grown to have a really, really good friendship with, I would be absolutely heartbroken if something like that was to happen. And in fact, he was working and he was accused of stealing, and it turned out that it was the other guy who was doing it. I digress. But the point is that out of something funny that Wanda Sykes said, which is, she does a really good job of it. I highly recommend watching it. But it really resonated with me. Then the other side, which is thinking about what I've noticed with a lot of my friends in this issue, is what about, there's always a but with there's not always, but some white people, they always go, well, what about this, right? All lives matter, or this or that. And when Wanda was saying about, well, what about if you're thinking what Black people should have a white friend, they have trust issues. It's true. The thought came to me because I'm on the African American Black History Month committee for my office, my building-wide federal building. And I started going to this committee for 6 years, and all the other members are Black. And I felt some apprehension on their part to let me into the group. And I could have just said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. But I continued to go and continue to go and continue to go and show up for them and not let it get me down. Anyway, my point is that finally I feel a part of the group. And when Wanda Sykes said that, it popped into my head like, oh, that was what I was feeling. And I needed to earn that trust. And I think I did. I don't know if I did, but I think I did. And then lastly, one of the times when I really was, I was like 20, 19, 20, I really learned about race inequality was when I was working at an architectural and engineering firm as a receptionist. I was like an inside salesperson, basically. And every day at lunch, there were 2 lunchrooms. The Thai guys from Thailand would go in one room, and then all the management, the white people, would go in the other room. And I found myself going with the Thai guys because they were fun. And I liked eating their food. They would always have me try their like funky foods. And I just loved it. And one day we were talking, and they mentioned about how they were not getting paid, or they weren't getting paid too much. And I said, what do you mean? You've been here for like 16 years. You got to be getting paid good. And he mentioned the leader of the Thai guys, because he spoke better English, mentioned, he says, oh, Maureen, you don't know. You just don't know. And I said, what do you mean? He says, you've got white skin. I said, oh, what does that mean? And he said about what his folks got paid. And I had worked there for about 2 years. I was a 19-year-old, and I got paid more than them. And that really opened my eyes to the inequalities. Back then, I didn't know how to go about saying anything. I was just like in complete shock. But I think that helped me to, expand. Of course, I'm still expanding, but there you go. So those are my shares.
Thank you very much, Maureen.
Yes, it be.
Yes, yes. Do we have time for one more person to share, Reverend Jeff?
If we can do it in a concise manner, yes. Anyone have a burning desire?
This is Donna. I don't know whether I can be concise, but I'll try.
Be yourself.
So as an Asian American, I have also experienced racism in a different form, having grown up in San Francisco, having lived in both Korea, Europe, West Coast, and the East Coast of the US. I've had the opportunity to have a lot of diverse experiences, as well as a lot of diverse friendships with people of all color. But I was born in Korea, and I recall as 4 or 5-year-old when I would see a white person or a Black person in Korea at the time, where obviously the majority of the populace, the vast majority, was one ethnicity, Korean ethnicity. It was strange to me as a little girl looking at a Black person or a white person, usually a military person. And I would look at them as different and strange. Well, when I came to the US, I was 5. We first arrived and lived in Sunnyvale, which is very white. And now I was the strange one. And all of the white people looked at us as a bit of a threat. So even as little kids walking to and fro from school, the white neighbors, I remember us stopping to smell some roses in a neighbor's garden. And a little while later, there was a knock on our door, on our apartment door. And it was a police officer who had come to say that one of the neighbors had called because we had vandalized, their rose garden or something, which absolutely was not true, which was terrifying, as a 5-year-old girl. We moved to San Francisco, which was a lot more diverse. And in the first grade, because I was in kindergarten, I was in Sunnyvale, and in San Francisco, I was in the first grade. And my Black friend, my very best friend in the first grade was a Black little girl named Nikki. And by that point, I didn't really notice color so much. I just thought she was very interesting. She had very interesting lunches where all she ate was salami slices. And I thought that was really cool. So I started bringing salami slices for lunch. And that was my experience. So I became more and more exposed. And it didn't, the fact that she was Black and that I was Asian, that was no longer in the forefront of my consciousness. What interested me was that she was interesting and she was nice, and we hung out. The second grade, my best friends were white, Japanese, and Chinese. So it kind of went on like that. And in high school, my parents separated. My dad moved to Oakland, and he, as an immigrant, there's very stereotypical immigrant story. He worked in a 7-Eleven and then owned a grocery store and owned restaurants, and he owned a couple of restaurants in Oakland. And I had many fights with both my dad and my stepmother because of the way they talked about Black people. Their experience was based on their conditioning. Their conditioning was based on their experiences, that every time they got robbed, it was by a Black male. So they had a fear of Black men. And I had many arguments with raised voices where I would scream at them to have them stop speaking about Black people as a stereotype and using derogatory terms. That continued throughout college and probably into my early 20s. In the meanwhile, I was discovering that I felt the most comfortable when I was with a very international group of people. People who were from all over the world and who had been educated in different places, not just in the US, and not just Asian people. I didn't feel comfortable with a group of just Asian people because that was so homogenous, and it was also very narrow-minded. And by that point, I had lived in Europe as well. And everywhere I would go, I would have conversations about race. But speaking about trying to help people understand, my friends, trying to help people understand when they would make a racist statement that they were not aware that was racist. So I would be speaking with an Asian person about the way they were talking about either blacks or whites. And then I would speak with, you know, a European person about the way they were talking about anybody that was non-white that was kind of racist. And because of the fact that these were friends of mine who had a lot of respect for my opinion, because I tend to be very judicious and I don't fly off the handle. I'm very reasonable. And I speak from a lot of wanting to help to understand myself and wanting others to understand. I would have these very deep conversations with people, which I felt, and I still feel to this day, is the way that we can change the world. Yeah. And now fast forward to last year, I was back in Korea, taking care of some financial things. My dad had passed away the year before. And it was very interesting because Korea, which is still very one ethnic group, but now, as we all know, it's become very international with the K-pop stars and, you know, all of that. I was watching a television program and I was, you know, surprised and shocked and kind of looking at a panel of white people who were speaking fluent Korean. Oh, and let me backtrack and say that, you know, having grown up in California, which is a very multicultural state, especially in the Bay Area, I have multiple times been asked by people, where are you from? And wow, you speak English so well. So, which, you know, originally I back in the day, I would get offended by that. But, you know, as I grew in my spiritual evolution, I understood they had not been exposed to other Asian people. And so I could see that. And then when I was driving from New York to California, I actually had an expectation that I would have racist remarks thrown at me. And I was very pleasantly surprised to have not one person, you know, because I was stopping in different states along the way. It took me several weeks to drive to California. I'd had no experience of racism during that entire drive, which it was a wonderful, pleasant surprise. So going back to Korea, seeing this panel of news pundits talking about some political thing, speaking better Korean than I do, because my Korean I can't speak about politics in Korean. I just kept going, that is so strange. Wow, that is really odd, seeing these white people speak Korean like a Korean. Yeah. And that, you know, made me really embodily understand white people saying to me, where are you from? You speak Korean so well. So so as I said, through my spiritual evolution, you know, I don't really get offended by those kinds of things anymore, because I know that it's, you know, when we get offended, it's because we feel threatened. Our identity, our status, our position is threatened in some way. And in the past, my identity as an American was threatened. I don't any longer feel that threatened because I'm so grounded in my own identity because of my spiritual work and my spiritual path. But I understand it when someone else is coming from that space. So knowing that my reaction of being so surprised at seeing these white people speak Korean so fluently helped me to, you know, really kind of embody that and be in the other, you know, the white person's shoes. So for me, always, I think if I continue to do my work, you know, and I say this everywhere, everything outside of us is a reflection of what's within us. And so as Reverend Francione, you were saying, when we do the work, we're helping to change the world. So I will continue to do that. And that's what I wanted to share.
And blessed be.
Thank you, Donna.
Thank you, Donna. Mhm.
Phew.
Since we have 1 minute.
Witnessing each other. Isn't that wonderful, friend?
What a blessing.
Yeah.
Lonnie Gonzalez has her hand up.
Lonnie,
you wanna go?
we're at about 8:29. How can you, how?
How can I be precise and quick in 1 minute?
Absolutely. I
You
know that.
got it. I just wanted to read something that I came across, and I'm sure you guys that are on Facebook have already seen it, but I just wanted to read it because I always see the sign Black Lives Matter, and then I hear people say that all lives matter, and I so agree with that. And I read this, and it just helped me put it in perspective, and it's quick. It says, we're not trying to start a race war. We're protesting to end it peacefully.
Mhm.
All lives cannot matter until you include Black lives. You cannot say all lives matter when you do nothing to stop systemic racism and police brutality. You cannot say all lives matter when Black people are dying and all you can complain about is the looting. You cannot say all lives matter when you allow children to be caged, veterans to go homeless, and poor families to go hungry and lose their health insurance. Do all lives matter? Yes. But right now, only Black lives are being targeted, jailed, and killed in mass. So that's who we're focusing on. Black lives matter.
Blessed be.
That's all I want to say. Thank you. And just help me put it all in perspective. Thank you for letting me have the last minute.
Well, yeah. Thank you, Bonnie. Reverend Fran, how you feeling? We ready to turn this thing over to Paul?
Well, I think that we want to respect people's time. And what it says to me is ... There's, as my mother used to say, ... There's more to be continued.
Yeah, blessed be. Thank you, Fran, and for your contribution, not only tonight, but for your presence in the village. I think I can speak on behalf of the village in that we are fortunate, to have somebody to whom we can come and say, what do we do with this? And you've got the heart and the consciousness to meet us there, and I'm grateful on behalf of the village. Thank you, friend. And we come full circle in prayer, reminding ourselves that all that we have considered tonight, all that we have thought and said and felt and been invited to step into, it's all God doing its thing. It's all life inviting us into a greater experience and a greater expression of it. That's what we're here to be. It's our design, it's our desire, and the universe withholds nothing from us. We come with an open mind and an open heart, and the universe says yes and accompanies us into co-creating this kind of world that in our hearts and in our souls we desire, the kind of world that truly works for everyone. And so grateful for this time, grateful for all that has been and all that is yet to be. I am knowing in this moment that something wonderful is going on. Something wonderful is going on. And the universe says yes and makes it so. And we let it be. And together we say.
And so it is.
It is.
Amen. Blessed be.
So
Thank
it
you,
is.
everyone.
And so it is.
Phew.
So Reverend Sally, we're going to turn it over to you. I'm going to say goodnight to everybody. Thank the team. Thank you all. You're